Someday, the high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. We are recording this show on the first day of summer, and we have a great guest on. I stumbled on Dirk Schwank while cruising through Twitter one morning, wasting my life away. I was really enjoying his tweets about the whole document scandal and his politics. He was the founding member and treasurer of Mad Dog PAC, a group founded to thwart Donald Trump in the 2020 election. Their goals on their website says to fight fascism, stop Trump, and restore sane and ethical government to this great nation. He works as an attorney and is also a songwriter and band leader of Dirk Schwank and the Truth. We will also be listening to several of his songs on tonight's show. And with no further ado, I would like to welcome Dirk Schwank. Dirk, how are you this evening?
I am doing great. It's good to be here.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. Tell us a little bit about, number one, now, where are we talking to you from? And give us a little background on Dirk's immersion into the world of politics and life in general.
The Dirk World Headquarters is here in Annapolis, Maryland, and both my studio and my office are here in the house. So I am camped here where I almost always am, whether I'm on Twitter or doing music or whatever else. And I've been here in Annapolis. I graduated from law school back in '94, so I've been here for a little while.
Wow. Well, we won't hold being an attorney against you. Some of my best friends are. My sister lives in Frederick, Maryland, so I've been out to that great state and enjoyed it every time. Next time I'm out there, I'll track you down. Dirk, tell us a little bit about your political awakening.
Well, I mean, I've always been really interested in politics, not necessarily from the sense of running so much, but I'm kind of an empathetic soul, and so I'm always much agitated about, sort of the big wigs stomping on the folks. So, the Trump era was quite a hard lesson, and it just seemed so entirely unnecessary for us to end up in that kind of situation. So that forced me to go on. I had a Twitter account for a long time, but I'd never kind of been active on it, and that forced me to go over onto Twitter and just try and get a better understanding of the kind of real-time happenings of the day. And that led me into sort of all sorts of, other kind of like-minded spirits that were dealing with, both, the kind of foreign efforts to corrupt our politics, billionaires kind of disrupting, what we were kind of talking about in the society, and, that led to Mad Dog PAC and some other things.
Now tell us
we were.
Because I also follow, I believe, the founder of Mad Dog PAC, Claude Taylor on Twitter. And before we forget, what is for those of our listeners out there, what is your Twitter handle in case they'd like to follow you?
My Twitter handle is at Dirk, D-I-R-K, last name Schwenk, S-C-H-W-E-N-K. And I'm pretty much out there in kind of most environments as either Dirk Schwank or Dirk Schwank Music is the other one. I'm on, like, Instagram, I think, and that kind of thing. But I'm most active probably on Twitter. But as far as I know, I'm the only Dirk Schwank in North America, so I'm fairly easy to find.
It is a unique name. So tell us a little bit about how Mad Dog PAC came about.
Mad Dog PAC came about like this. Claude insulted, sort of in the way that he does. He's pretty out there on Twitter, but a woman that is sort of a famous right-wing agitator. She was working for Sputnik News, which is the Russian-owned. It's no longer viable in the United States, but was then the active and Russian-owned news outlet. He got into some beef with her on Twitter, and she sued him for defamation, and her lawyer was another person who he was just graduated from law school. I'm not going to name either one of those people because they're horrible, but his lawyer had just graduated from law school, was also a Sputnik reporter up until the time that he graduated from law school. They sued him, and so he put it out on Twitter that that he needed counsel, and he got lots of kind of mediocre type legal advice that one gets on Twitter. But what he did not get, aside from me, was a Maryland barred attorney to be like, yeah, I'll step up. So that's kind of the first place that we really met. I stepped up to defend him, and the Mad Dog PAC was kind of founded as we started raising money for the defense. It became clear that hey, once that case was dismissed, which we got it dismissed, it became clear that he could raise money for other kinds of things too, and so that's how Mad Dog PAC got started.
Well, God bless you guys for doing the good work. Let's jump in. I was really wasn't until less than 2 weeks ago I ran into a great thread you did on the whole Donald Trump documents case. If you just want to run that down, because you're very insightful on how illegal the whole operation was on Trump's part. Tell our listeners a little bit about that from your point of view, Dirk Schwenk.
Well, I'm not. I do a lot of threads, so I'm not 100% sure. I do recall you're saying which one you said, but here's the situation that Trump finds himself in. He took something like 60 or 70 boxes of documents of a variety of kinds of things out of the White House when he left. Pretty soon after that, the National Records Administration knew that he had documents, and some of which they suspected, I think, were top secret, some of which they suspected were just presidential records of a variety of kinds. And so they asked him for them, and all presidential records, all records that were developed in the White House by the president during the presidency are owned by the government, and he has to turn them over. So they asked him for it, and he blew them off, of course. And then they asked him again, and they got a little more serious, and they eventually subpoenaed those documents. And what this new indictment showed, and that's what this thread was about, I guess, was the indictment actually being revealed, was that he had 70 boxes of documents at Mar-a-Lago. When he was subpoenaed, which is a legal requirement to answer, he went through something like 30 of those boxes, pulled out documents that he wanted to keep, and then turned over the rest of those documents according to the subpoena. Meanwhile, certifying that he had turned everything over when he hadn't turned anything vaguely like all the things over that he were subpoenaed. So that right there is, it's obstruction of justice. It's like, it's violation of all sorts of laws right there. And, and this indictment just goes through, and I encourage everybody to read it. You can go out there and read it. It's been published by the Department of Justice now that it's been unsealed. And, he took those documents, he had them in his bathroom, he had them on the stage at Mar-a-Lago. They threw them in this storage unit. People were pawing through them. There was pictures in there that showed that some of them were spilled in the storage room and on the floor, and who knows who was at Mar-a-Lago, during that time, potentially in the storage room or on the stage and pawing through those documents and finding things. It's nuts.
Did you see the interview on Fox News the other night?
I did watch part of it, yeah, with Bret Baier.
Yeah. And now, I guess you're a lawyer, so you know more about it. So Judge Cannon said that Jack Smith and crew had to put a list of evidence they have. It looks pretty damning to me. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it looks pretty damning to me too. And even before, Trump has a long history with attorneys, which is like back even into the 80s, attorneys that he was hiring were having to kind of create protocols for themselves so that they didn't end up getting, arrested or disbarred, although that's not really working because everybody still seems to be getting arrested and disbarred. But, back even in those days, like back into the 80s, they were having to meet with multiple attorneys in the room so that there would not just be an attorney talking to Trump, but an attorney also listening to the conversation so that they could record what Trump had actually said, because he lies to everyone, including his attorneys, all the time. I mean, that's just an established fact. I am pretty partisan, but that is fact. You cannot work with the man. He lies to his attorney. So, first of all, federal prosecutors have something like a 98% success rate. If you get indicted by the feds, the chances of your getting acquitted are, minuscule. The vast likelihood is you're going to get convicted. And for a situation as high profile as this, and as carefully crafted as this, your chances, even if you've got the best attorneys and the best defense and the best arguments, et cetera, are bad. And he does not have the best attorneys, and his arguments are terrible.
We've got Dirk Schwank from Annapolis, Maryland, attorney, good progressive, and a musician, on for the whole show tonight on the Wall of Power Radio Hour. We're going to go out on this first set of three with a song he wrote that I find very enjoyable. Shares a title with the Patti Smith song. Here is Power to the People by Dirk Schwank and the Truth, and we'll have Dirk on for the rest of the show on the Wall of Power Radio Hour.
Just one truth that matters to us now. It's just one truth that greed will kill us all. It's just one truth. They do what we allow. We gotta take back power to the people. No more mobbed up crime waves. Power to the people. We're not a nation of slaves. Power to the people. We gotta join together. They'll take it all, and they'll laugh when we fall. It's just one truth. They'll own us if they can. It's just one truth. There's more of us than them. It's just one truth. We vote and we will win. We gotta take back power to the people. No more mobbed up crime waves. Power to the people. We're not a nation of slaves.
Wall of Power Radio Hour.
Welcome back to the second set of the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. Our guest all night is good progressive patriot, songwriter, musician, and attorney Dirk Schwank from Maryland. Dirk, let's talk a little bit about your music career. We just heard your song, Power to the People. What record was that on?
That record was my sort of Trump-era 2020 EP called Peace Rage that was all, protest songs and political notions and that kind of thing. And I wrote it, it was sort of during the pandemic and everything else. We did it at my friend's studio here in Annapolis.
When did you start playing music?
I started playing music, I think like a lot of people, I started playing music in concert band, I think probably in like third grade. I started at clarinet, and I played that for a long time. I played bass clarinet, some saxophone, till they kicked me out of the high school band. And then I joined up, I started playing bass with some other buddies in high school. My first stage experience as a rock and roll guy was the high school talent show back when, and
There we
it was a good
go.
time, so.
I've done that.
So I kept going. Yes.
Now, so when did Dirk and the Truth? When did that band start playing?
We've been together, I want to say, about 5 years. So I took a long time off. I was raising kids in law school and, my early career and kind of thing. I took a long time off, and then I started playing again here, here and around Annapolis and in Maryland. I did some videos with a guy who does Free State Workshop. Shout out to that, because it's a fantastic Maryland YouTube channel that's got a lot of the young this is now mostly 10 years ago, but a lot of the really good local Maryland talent. And so I did that, and I did solo stuff mostly for a while through there, and, played around here. And then we formed up, it's about 5 years ago, with another bass player that's in town that was looking to do some original stuff and, kind of expand off of the kind of, typical stuff you do when you're doing bar gigs of, rock covers and that kind of thing. And so we did, really focused on the originals for the past few years, and it's been good. We've got a full-length album out too, so shout out to Dirk and the Truth over there.
Now, what is the website for your music, Dirk?
So my solo stuff is up on dirkschwenk.com, and then the band stuff is up on a website called Dirk and the Truth, and either one of those things we're also up on the streaming service and that kind of thing. But Dirk and the Truth is the band side. And we've got we did I don't know if we released it in 2020 or 2021, but we did a full-length CD called Captured by Aliens over there.
Well, I've really enjoyed the music I've listened to. We're going to listen to a couple more of your songs here over the course of the Wall of Power Radio Hour. And, I've always said most of us that are hip know that music is such an important part of the movement. Whether you go back to Paul Robeson, Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie, and then of course bringing ahead a couple of decades to Bob Dylan and Phil Oakes and Buffy St. Marie and Joan Baez. So I applaud your progressive politics merging with the music. Do you play many political benefits for the cause?
I would say I do more. I do more kind of direct stuff. So I do less political stuff and more environmental kind of stuff. We do lots of benefits for that kind of thing. There's also some organizations around here that do benefits for musicians, and I shout out to that, because for the people that are working as full-time musicians, life is tough. There's not, insurance for that. There's not, unionization for that. And so I do lots and lots of stuff here locally for the organizations that support musicians. But yeah, just to harken back to what you just mentioned, some of the old protest songs and Dylan and all those cats, I actually feel like, I'm sure there's more than I know of, but I feel like there's a real vacuum there. It's part of the reason that I wrote, the songs for Peace Rage. All that stuff was original to the time, and I just feel like there is some stuff out there. Jack Johnson put out a good song, in that era too. But I just feel like there's so much more room for timely political and social commentary. It's tough out there, and people need to be expressing what's going on.
I totally agree. I'm going to send you a few of my songs. I've been kind of doing that stuff. Oh, geez, I put up my first record in 1984, and some of my most requested songs are actually some of my political songs. So I know for a fact there's an audience out there, and probably a bigger audience that's yearning to hear more of that music. What is your feel in general? I've always get frustrated with the Democrats, because really with, whether it's Biden economics and all the other great things the left is doing, and I've got to shout out to Minnesota, we've got a governor and a House and a Senate that is all DFL controlled, and we are just kicking butt here in the North Star state. But I've always been frustrated with Democrats always seem to have a problem getting the word out about the good things they do. What's your thought?
I mean, the observation is 100% correct. The messaging of success, isn't well. It doesn't broadcast in the way that it should, and I'll say that I push back a little bit. I don't necessarily want to blame Democrats about that, because in part, when you talk about Democratic political animals, their job is partly messaging, but in many ways it's delivery. And I do think,
Right.
if you focus on them delivering, in light of the headwinds that they are perpetually facing, I think they do. I think they do deliver. Like you said, Minnesota is a fantastic example. Maryland is a very Democratic state. Like, things are good, here, and thank goodness that it's as dominant and liberal as it is, because otherwise, you look at Florida and Texas and these places, and there's like real pain down, in those states.
Oh,
So,
my God.
So to push back just a little bit, that we have a societal problem. Part of it is just humans. Humans love bad news. And so, the more fear-mongering and the, oh, my God, sky is falling, Chicken Little, the better people like it. And so, news is driven that way, and it's partly just a very human, humans just, they're panicky and kind of stupid.
Yeah,
that's just who we are. That's our,
Yeah, if
that's
it
our,
bleeds,
our thing.
if it bleeds, it leads, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's not, that's not Democrats' fault. That's like humans' fault.
Yeah.
And I definitely would put a lot of, and I'm willing to point the finger too, like at the traditional press. The traditional press does a horrible job. They do a fantastic job of covering Trump saying stupid things, and how outrageous it is and how much fun it is to watch that. They do a terrible job of really, giving the American people an assessment of a factual assessment of like what is going on in anything, economics, military spending, the social safety net. Like, they just don't do it, and partly it's because people don't read it or watch it, but it's not all. And so, I feel for the political animals that have to like do everything and deliver. It's tough.
What I've had 8 or 9 episodes we're going to have next week. The great political writer Charles Pearson, we call his episodes Checkpoint Charlie. I call him my psychological morphine drip to all things political. And I always ask him what blogs he reads. What blogs would you suggest, Dirk, for my listeners to follow to get the real deal, the truth on what's going on out there?
That's, it's funny. I don't read a lot of long form stuff. I do read the newspaper. So I read Washington Post and I read the Annapolis Capital here. I don't read, I do read some blogs. Hold on. Let me,
Yeah, go
see
ahead.
what's in my email box right now. Cause I actually do. And I appreciate it. So hold on. I do have some that I can really recommend.
Yeah, for those of you that just tuned in, we've got Dirk Schwank on from Annapolis. He's a founding treasurer of the Mad Dog Pack, musician, songwriter, and attorney, fighting the good fight. And he's going to hip us to what comes in his email for cool blogs.
All right. So I follow Judd Legum at Popular Information. I started following Judd because he actually ran, I think, for county council in my district. And so I was sort of familiar with him. He's since moved on out of politics, and he's much more of just a straight hardcore reporter. But a lot of he does a lot of good on sort of corporate accountability and some of those things. So a lot of times you'll have corporations that are announcing, hey, we're sort of environmentally friendly. We've got all these green green policies. And then he does a lot of like who are they actually donating money to on the political side in the back, which is really, really good. And so he's really good at sort of pointing out the disparities between what people say they're doing and what they're actually doing. He's really good at that. Just had another one I read is Greg O'Lear.
Yes,
he does Prevail, and he's on Twitter. His most recent one is on third party candidates, going back to starting at the one that just drives me insane, which is Ralph Nader, but going forward now to obviously this whatever is it the what's the name of this new thing that's supposedly like this centrist thing, but could only possibly pull voters away from.
Is that No Labels?
Oh yeah, No Labels. And like whoever it is they're talking about, Robert F. Kennedy and these freaks. So yeah. Those two I read quite regularly. I read. I don't know if you're familiar with you probably are, but Empty Wheel, Marcy Wheeler.
No,
I don't get her. Blog, although I read it sometimes on. Hold on, let me pull her up and make sure I have it right. Yeah, so Empty Wheel, that's her Twitter handle. Her name is Marcy Wheeler, and she is bar none. If you want to know what's going on, with who said what and what evidence is available and who's been charged with what or convicted of what in all of the kind of Trump era stuff, going back to 2016 in the Mueller report and going forward now to the current, iterations of stuff. She is absolutely the lead pipe cold lock expert on what is and what is not in the kind of public record.
That is fantastic. I need somebody new to read. We've got Dirk Schwenk on for the whole show on the Wall of Power Radio Hour. We're going to take a left turn here, so to speak, and listen to another one of Dirk's songs. This one's going to be called Flag on a Hill, and then we'll be back one more set with Mr. Dirk Schwenk.
There's a flag on a hill in my hometown, next to a statue of George Washington, and it flies for ideas that he fought for anyone, ideas that still hold today. One person, one vote, and the law above all. United defense that we never let fall, and everyone with a chance to answer their call. No royals or church of the state, and we can't just take this for granted. It's a peace and the strength, they must be defended. It's the land of the free, best on the planet, and we must defend or stand like a flag on a hill. And the way we must go is lit by science's light. Children's education, a commitment to rights, and peace when we're able but willing to fight. That's the American way. And we can't just take this for granted. It's a peace and a strength, it must be defended. It's the land of the free, best on the planet, and we must defend or stand like a flag on a hill, flag on a hill, like a flag on a hill, flag on a hill. I walked in from the road to a house that was a home. It's a table set for two, but that's not really something like what you do when the candles are all burned down. There's dishes all around. As I step up to the stairs, there's a strange something in the air, and I walked up to the second floor, put my hand up on the bedroom door. There I paused as I can't escape the thought that I saw a table set for two.
Welcome back to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. We just heard a song by my guest Dirk Schwenk called Table for Two. Dirk, tell us a little bit about that song.
That song, the story in that song is, your protagonist is driving home and kind of, walks in the door after being away for a while, and, things aren't quite right, and starting with the notion that there's a table set for two, there's plates and candles and whatnot, but but he's been away, and so that's kind of the direction that song goes. I'm happy to say that I'm happily married, and that didn't actually happen to me, but I will say I think all people have been in that situation of just like, and this is how the song started for me. Like literally, I drove home. It was like a May day. It was beautiful, and I drove into my driveway. And I'd been at the office, and I came home early, and I was like, I hope everything's all right.
Right.
And luckily it was. But that's kind of where that story came from. And
I totally get it, because sometime in the late 80s, I had a girlfriend that I was living with who tried to kick me out of a car at 70 miles an hour. So I can't get the vibe. I've been there. Dirk, I'm really enjoying this conversation. What, we've got just less than 2 years away from 2024. What is your fear? I'm afraid of the gerrymandering and the suppression of the vote. What is your fear, and then what is your optimism as we look forward to the next presidential election?
I'll start with optimism. Here's my optimism. I do feel like young voters and liberal voters and women voters are energized and far less complacent. They really understand, for maybe the first time in my lifetime, like everyone seems to understand, like these votes matter. And and beyond that, presidential years are almost always better for Democrats, because people feel like, the president is important, so they'll go out to vote even if they might not be out to vote, in the, just for House races or just for local races. So I feel like the voters are, the right voters in my mind are, the right wing is always extremely motivated, and they always show up. So it's really a question of whether or not liberals and Democrats and sane people show up. And I'm optimistic that they will, and that they understand the stakes now. My fear...
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm with you. Gerrymandering and suppression are a problem. My biggest fear is that, we really have an ongoing rising tide of right-wing political violence in this country. And even if that's not enough to change this sort of global vote, it's certainly enough to make things horrible for individual people who suffer from it. Right. And I would really like to see a little less political violence in this country. That scares and frustrates me.
Do you think Trump is ever going to see jail time?
The only way that he does not see jail time is if he passes away, or if he or a similarly insane Republican is elected president and pardons him.
Mm-hmm. I follow as much DeSantis as I can stand, but the guy is like has absolutely no personality, and of course he's a complete fascist on top of it. So I don't really see what it, I'm all for them running Trump in 2024 because I don't think there's an independent in the country that would pull the switch for him. Switch, I mean voter in the voting booth, not the electric chair switch, but of which there would be quite a few that would pull that switch. But I don't really see any other GOP candidate that has absolutely any traction in the real world. What about you?
I'm in agreement with that. I think, the thing that has been exposed by the Trump phenomenon is that, like, these are the real Republican voters. They may not be the real, Trump may be somewhat, or at least was somewhat of an outlier in Republican, like, real politics. But Trump's voters are the real animated base of the Republican Party. And what you're seeing with them is they have been they are a one-man, they're a one-trick pony. Like, Trump is their guy. No one else is good enough. And I don't think that anybody else, DeSantis or anyone else right now, poses any kind of a significant threat. And the Republican Party has no means of expanding its base because you can't walk away from Trump voters. So I'm with you. Like, Trump is really the only one that I think has a chance. And I don't really think he has a chance, but, never, ever, ever get ahead of ourselves and, get complacent.
Now, I think another, of course, the abortion decision really motivated the 2020 electorate to come out. I really think, and I'd like to know your thoughts on this, Dirk Schwenk, that the expansion of the Supreme Court, in light of all of the scandals, whether it's Alito fishing in Alaska with the billionaire, or Clarence Thomas, or Clarence Thomas's wife, or whoever else will be coming up in the news. I think the expansion of the Supreme Court is a real, legitimate issue that the Democrats should embrace.
I agree with that, and as a lawyer, it's hard for me to even express the disgust I feel. Like I've known about, everybody knew that Scalia was out there partying with whoever, but the steady set of stories from ProPublica about how corrupt the right wing branch of the Supreme Court is just, it's absolutely disgusting. And so I'm in agreement with you. Like, pretty much everything is on the table about that. Democrats should absolutely be running on that. Running on what the Supreme Court is doing to our individual liberties and the corruption there. It's a really interesting case study to me. A second Biden term. Biden has been, he's delivered on a ton of very liberal, ideas as a legislator. But if you watch him, he also presents at the same time really pretty kind of, middle of the road. Like, you don't see how liberal he is. And so he certainly has never come out and said, hey, we should expand the Supreme Court.
Right.
A second term when he, was term limited and he only had 4 more years and he had a Senate and a Congress. If everybody was liberal in that, like, would he do that? That's a good question. I don't know. I think something has to be done. I'll say this. The notion that you could have 9 individuals and all it would take for the evil billionaires is to figure out, like, how do we corrupt 3 of them to change the course of American history? Like, that can't go on. That risk is too great.
Yeah, and they've been the Federalist Society and those billionaires. It doesn't seem like they've got several of the justices on speed dial. For God's sakes,
100% they do. 100% they do.
Let's go to the tragedy in the news. I saw you tweeting about it this last day or two. The submarine that's probably has either imploded or disappeared, and the millions of dollars that are spent on that. And we all feel sorry for anybody who perishes, especially under such tragic conditions. But you and others have kind of made a point of, we have 600 migrants drowning in the Mediterranean, no rescue there to speak of, and but here you've got every resource available to get the folks trying to go down and see the Titanic and exploring that. What are your feelings on that, Dirk?
I have a lot of thoughts on all that. I mean, and I did actually do a tweet thread on sort of what's normal. I do quite a bit of maritime law, and so I know some things about sort of how ships are supposed to be inspected and seaworthiness and all that kind of thing. I mean, and, with respect to both of these things, a lot of the migrant disasters are because they're overloading ships or using them in places, in ways that they shouldn't. They shouldn't be in the open ocean. They're really inshore ships or whatever. And it's just obvious that greed is driving that, by the people that are trafficking those people. With respect to this, the Titanic sub, I mean, there really were no safety constraints whatsoever on this. Like, it's shocking that someone would expose themselves to that. But, the Titanic has been, I don't know, it's captures so much that it's impossible to look away from another story that, like, really addresses the Titanic. But let me just give you let me point to a broader theme with respect to the migrants in the Mediterranean. So,
please.
There is no question that Putin and the Russians and the evils in general are purposefully driving migrants out of North Africa and the Middle East toward Europe to destabilize Europe. And they do the exact same thing here in Central and South America to send people up into the United States to destabilize us in our politics. And so just I wish people understood, and by golly, I wish the press would cover the fact that this is an intentional effort to destabilize democracies, and we should stop allowing it. We shouldn't be in a situation of, like, shoving migrants offshore because, everybody's mad about them. We should do something about the evils that are causing those problems.
Dirk Schwenk, that's a point of view that I've never really considered, and I really appreciate that. Excuse me, and I appreciate your time, and this is exactly why you are a guest this week on the Wall of Power Radio Hour. For those of you that wonder how Schwenk is spelled, is Schwenk, and Dirk is Dirk. Dirk, this has been a real delightful conversation. I look forward to meeting you in person one of these days, and keep up your great work, both politically and musically.
All right, Paul, I really, really appreciated it. It's so nice to have a little light shined on some of my music stuff, too. So it's been great. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show was produced by Paul Metza, engineered by Brett Johnson. We'd like to thank our guest, Dirk Schwenk. Follow me at paulmetza.com. My book, Alphabet Jazz, Poetry, Prose, Stories, and Songs, is available on Amazon. Also in person, you can get it at the Electric Fetus. My book I wrote with Rick Shevchik, Blood in the Tracks, the Minnesota musicians behind Dylan's masterpiece, is out by the U of M Press on September 12th, and you can pre-order it on Amazon. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.
There will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall.